Hey everybody, welcome to another Sandia Mountain Natural History Center quick trip. Today we got a little bit of a special one. We are at Carlsbad Caverns National Park. Heading down into the cave. And most people probably do not know this, but I used to be a park ranger here a long time ago. So we're going to give you a little bit of a behind the scenes tour of Carlsbad Caverns. Let's get started. A lot of credit gets given to a guy named Jim White for discovering the cave, but if we look closely, right there, there's actually some pictographs. I'm not sure what those are, but pretty much proves that Jim White was not the one that discovered the caves. We're going to be dropping about 800 vertical feet down to the bottom of this cave. The tour is actually going to go back behind me, but one of the things that Carlsbad is known for are its bats. And out this way, a few hundred yards, is where about 300,000 bats live during the summer. And that's where they come from in their famous bat flight. If you go back there, I got the chance to go back there one time, and there is a mountain, a literal 30-foot high mountain of bat guano back there. You have to wear a respirator and make sure your clothes are all sealed up. That's the last natural light that we'll see for about 2 hours as we descend into the cave. This area of a cave is called the Twilight Zone. Unfortunately, flat-bottomed formations like this are not natural. These have been broken at some point. It's estimated that over 65,000 formations in Carlsbad Caverns have been broken at one time or another. In some caves, it used to be custom to take a souvenir stalactite or stalagmite, or scientifically they're known as speleothems, with you, but that is obviously not what is done anymore. This formation is called the Whale's Mouth, and it has significance for park rangers because it used to be custom that if anyone was hurt at a point above the whale's mouth, they would be taken out on stretcher through the natural entrance. If you were hurt below the whale's mouth, you would be taken out by wheelchair down the cave and through the elevator. People often think when they come to the cave that they're seeing the whole thing, but actually behind me, in this nondescript part of the cave, if you crawl through there, make your way back half mile or so, you will come to a place called the Hall of the White Giant. So there is a huge parts of this cave that are not open to the public. And this one is one of them. But you gotta crawl through all that to get into Hall of the White Giant. Often, but cell phones and even radios don't really work down here in the cave. So not only are these phones good for visitors to call if they're in trouble, but as rangers patrol the cave, they check in on these phones and get alerted to any problems around the cave. So another secret is way down in this hole. They don't have a sign or mention it or anything, but they found a prehistoric sloth at one time. There are still segments of the old trail in Carlsbad Caverns, and sometimes rangers use these as shortcuts to different parts of the cave or hiding spots to relax. These formations coming up are referred to as the witch's fingers. Can you see it? How crooked a finger they look? This is why it's critical not to touch any of these formations. The oils from our hands basically seal them, and they don't grow anymore. Plus, they get dirty and nasty. No way to clean them either. This is more of the old trail. Very old trail. This area that looks like a sponge or bone is called the boneyard. And back in the day, I helped map that boneyard. Tons of little passages that you gotta crawl through, measure, and then mark on a map. Well, not really mark on a map, you're making the map. A lot of people call these people spelunkers, but people who explore caves really prefer the term cavers. But these cavers are emerging from a place called Lower Cave. And we're going to see a little bit later in the video the traditional entrance to Lower Cave, but this is the more modern entrance that has been discovered since. But it's one of the places that you can go in Carlsbad Caverns on an off-trail experience. So if you're wondering what a bathroom 750 feet underground looks like, this is it. But the real question you should be asking is, where does all the waste go? It actually gets pumped up. Most septic systems go down. This one goes back up to the surface. This area is known as the underground lunchroom. Lunch isn't served down here anymore because that's really bad for the cave's ecosystem. But there's a lot of cool history here. This part of the cave is the entrance to the deepest part of the cave, called Lake of the Clouds, out through Left-Hand Tunnel. This area was also used, or it was planned to be used, as a bomb shelter during the Cold War in the 1960s and 70s. Pretty crazy stuff. This flat rocky area may not look like much, but it's actually all the tailings from when the elevator shaft was blasted out. If you think about it, you can't haul all that stuff up, so it actually filled a couple pits here. And these depressions are actually areas where the Park Service had started to, but doesn't look like they got too far, started to actually try and restore this area to what the cave would have been like prior to the elevator being blasted in the 1930s. This formation, which for some reason they don't have lit up, is called the Sword of Damocles. You can look that up in your mythology, but it's almost touching. A couple more 1,000 years and it'll be a column. This ladder is the original way that explorers found their way down into Lower Cave. So if we look up this wall, right there is a hole in the wall. It's called the Bemis Hole, named after Tom Bemis. And I got to be here in 1995 or 6, I forget. When he climbed up there, he was a real small little guy, climbed up there and went in that hole to see where it went. And unfortunately, it didn't go anywhere. There are thousands upon thousands of feet of electrical cable within the cave. But one of the things that people don't think about are the light bulbs. Part of my job was to replace those light bulbs, and some of those trips took me 6 hours to get into the remote parts of the cave to change bulbs. I'm not sure if it's still there, but behind this formation used to be a secret bathroom. If it was really, really, really an emergency, that's where people would go. We're looking down into the bottomless pit, but I have a secret to tell you. It's not actually bottomless. It's about 140 feet deep. One of my jobs when I worked here was to rappel down there and retrieve all the things that people would throw down there, hoping to hear it hit the bottom. Please don't do that. Here's some formations that are still growing. We know they're growing because they're so white and they're wet. So this is a pretty significant part of the cave. These blocks are gypsum. And during the cavern's development, that gypsum got here because hydrogen sulfide gas coming up from the oil and gas reserves around here mixed with oxygen to form sulfur. And then microbes actually came and converted that sulfur into sulfuric acid, which is how this cave became so big. But the reason I think every cave video has to have an explanation of formations. Stalagmite, might reach the ceiling, or G for ground, and stalactites hang tight to the ceiling. They don't have these cave pools lit up anymore, and for good reason. For some reason, people like to throw coins in them. So if they're not lit up, I don't think people throw coins in them. But part of my job when I worked here was to fish those coins out with a long spoon with a short spoon on a long broomstick and try and scoop them out. And the reason for that is because they would get a fungus on them and they would turn this water black. These are all soda straws. So if you imagine a drip and the outer edge is hardening, and as it continues to drip, the outer edges harden and the inside of the formation is actually hollow.
As you leave the cave, there are 2 doors leading to the elevator. That's important because they form an airlock. This airlock helps retain moisture inside of the cave, which is critical for the cave ecosystem. When the elevator was blasted, it actually changed the ecosystem greatly. There's been a lot of work on these elevators the past few years, and I'm not sure if this is possible anymore. Certainly not advised, but we used to ride on top of the elevator all the way up to the visitor center. It was a really cool experience, but probably pretty dangerous.